The positive charge falls toward positive charge, expelling negative discharge as radioactive emanations. If positive charge falls toward positive charge, it is logical to say that the principle which governs positive charge alone has the ability to attract. The disintegrated apple rises from the ground because radiation repels it and positive charge expels it. The negative discharge of the apple seeks the greater expanse of low potential. Its rising is a radiative effect in respect to the planet from which it is centrifugally rising to seek its own potential. As it rises, it expands until it finds its orbit in the pressure zone of its potential. It may impact against the inertial plane of another mass toward which it would centrifugally fall and become regenerated. This would be a gravitative effect in respect to the mass toward which it fell. Its regeneration by impact against the inertial plane of another mass causes it to contract. It becomes electropositive. Its positive charge is attracted by the potential of the mass toward which it falls and by which it is absorbed as nourishment, and finally discharged once more as radiative emanations. This is the manner of assembling and disassembling of every form of ideal. This is the manner of accumulation and distribution of all energy. This is the manner in which all bodies are nourished and famished. This is the process of vitalization and devitalization. All effects of motion are gravitational and radiational effects. Also, they are electric and magnetic effects, just as they are likewise chemical effects. Let us now consider the various gravitational and radiational expressions one by one. Fortunate it is that all of these expressions have dimensions, and that all dimensions are measurable. Let us first briefly consider them in their relation to the subject under discussion, which is the apparent power to attract or to repel. Let us then consider ways and means of measuring them, and see if by so doing, some of nature's long-guarded secrets will not become simple to comprehend and to utilize. Next chapter, Expression of Gravitation and Radiation. Universal Direction. The cycle of a wave is an orderly progression in the universal direction from south to north by the way of east, and back again to south by the way of west. All masses revolve from the west toward the east, around the nuclear centers of their systems throughout the entire cycle of their waves. All masses rotate upon axis throughout the entire cycle of their waves from the west toward the east of their masses. To these laws there are no exceptions. Numerous apparent exceptions such as the retrogression of Neptune and her satellite, the moons of Uranus, and the outer moons of Jupiter and Saturn, are thoroughly in accord with the absolute laws of universal direction. All direction of motion is universal. Motion implies direction, demands direction in which to move. In the dimensionless universe of motion, direction is non-existent. In the universe of the illusion of dimension, direction is one of the necessary illusions which creates the appearance of dimension. Direction is, therefore, an illusion, which we familiarly call an effect of motion. All effects of motion are expressed in apparent opposites. It is well to recall the fact that the concept of motion is universally simultaneous and its expression sequential. The attraction of gravitation and the repulsion of radiation are instantaneous and continuous. Time is not consumed in transferring the concept of any intended expression of energy throughout the dimensionless universe. The action which is an expression of the intent has dimension and therefore consumes time. In other words, the concept image of all ideal of thinking is universally simultaneous, but the production and reproduction of the form of ideal through motion is a series of events which are sequential. All opposite effects are positive and negative, or more and less, or plus and minus. Like all other effects of motion in the universe of dimension, direction has its opposites. In this universe of more and less, the opposites of that effect of motion which we call direction are north and south. All directions begin at the pressureless plane of south and end at the opposed pressures planes of north. North is the electropositive plus direction of the more, and south is the electronegative minus direction of the less. The plus electric force is always away from the south toward north, and the minus magnetic force is always away from the north and back to the south. North begins at south, at the point where energy expresses itself by impact against the inertial plane. At this point, energy simultaneously measures the intensity of its concept in harmonic circles of inertial planes over areas which become the basis of opposing cones of energy. It also measures the intensity of its concept at the intersection of the primary and secondary vertical initial planes at attitudes which become the apices of those opposing cones. The axis of those cones then become the charging pole areas of all mass and the line of its forming wave. Energy simultaneously measures its volume intensity by connecting the circular inertial bases of conceptual cones with their apices. The harmonic circles which measure the bases of cones are the octave conceptual dimensions of the energy wave of measurable dimension. The apices of the cones are the overtones of the wave. The line of increasing force is from the magnetic base following the northerly electric stream to the apex of every cone of energy. Conversely, the line of decreasing force is from the electric apex following the southerly magnetic stream to the base of every cone of energy. South is the direction towards stability and the force of non-motion of substance in inertia. South is the plane of inertia where every expression of energy begins to gather its force from the expanded area of its harmonic circles, with the intent of overcoming the inertia of substance by concentrating it into harmonic spheres at its overtone points of north. All energy expresses itself in spiral waves. The inertial plane of every wave is its south. Every direction away from the inertial plane is north. South is the plane of inertia which apparently divides, as inertia is overcome, into two series of opposing planes of motion, the positive and the negative series. Each series of opposing planes of motion tilts spirally away from inertia on opposite sides until the harmonic circles which define their areas have not only attained angles of 90 degrees to it, but have turned halfway around. This process can best be visualized by placing two discs together and viewing them edgewise as lines. Then simultaneously tilt and rotate these discs away from each other on opposite edges until they are seen as two circular planes. South is the birthplace of motion, where inertia is overcome, and the wheels of the universal machine began slowly to revolve. South is the birthplace of all effects of motion, where reality ends and illusion begins.